Okay, Siman Pei Ches. Here, the Shagat goes back to discussing one of the Shagat's favorite topics, which we got very involved in, which is chametz of a guy that you took responsibility for on Pesach. However, unlike the other sugyas, which were extremely difficult regarding this topic, this one I think is a little bit easier to understand. Okay, so let's just review the Gemara on Daf Hey Amud Beis, which is the first Mar Makom. Amar Mar. Yachol Yatmin v'yakavu piktonos min hanachrim. You might think that you can hide chametz without seeing it, or you might think you could take deposits of chametz from a guy because it's not yours. Talmud Lomar. Therefore, the pasuk says lo yamatzei. Not only can you not see chametz, but you can't have chametz found by you at all. Now, ha'amar Reisha, we said originally shalcha iataroa ava ataroa shalachirim. We have a drasha that it's only your chametz which is problem on Pesach. Chametz of someone else means of a guy, b'shal gavoa, or if it belongs to hektish. So then we said it's not a problem to have on Pesach, and here we're saying from lo yamatz that it is a problem. So we say lo kash, it's not difficult. Ha de kabbalei achrayis, ha de lo kabbalei achrayis. It depends whether you took responsibility for it or not. Ki had amar lahu Rava livnei mechuza. It's like what Rava said to the people in Mechuza. Be'iru chamira devnei chela. You have to get rid of the chametz of the goyim, mi beisaychu, from your houses. Kivan de'ilu mignav v'ilu mitbad. If it were stolen or lost, b'rishu saychu kai, it's in your rishus, means you're responsible for it. Uvi'isu l'shalume, and you're gonna have to pay them. Kidul chondami. It's like it's yours, va'aser. And therefore, you can't have it on Pesach. Okay, so the major discussion that we're going to discuss over here within this din is how much responsibility do I have to have for the chametz in order for me to be chayiv? We know when it comes to the dinim of shomerim, there's different levels, right? Say like a shomer chinam is chayiv for pshia, right? If he's negligent in watching it. A shomer sachar, a person that's paid to watch, has a greater responsibility. Even if it's stolen or lost, he has to pay for it. And someone that borrows something has an even higher level of responsibility. Even if an ones, right, something that was uncontrollable happened to it, he still has to pay. So there's all different levels of responsibility. I mean, you could take even more responsibility than a shoel, because a shoel, if it got ruined while he was using it, he'd be patur. But the person could accept responsibility even if it gets ruined. While he's using it, he'd be chayiv. How much responsibility do you have to have for the chametz of a guy for it to be considered yours? Right, all different levels of responsibility. So it's a machlokes. The sheet of the Rambam is that you have to at least have responsibility for genev and aveda. Means if it's stolen or lost, you would have to pay for it. If you would only have to pay for it if you're negligent, that's not like it's yours. It's only yours if you have a higher level of responsibility, that even if it was stolen from you, you'd have to pay for it. That's what the Rambam says. Now, how does he know that? Two ways. One is from the Gemara that we just read. What was the lashon of Rava? Rava told the people in the city, if the chametz would be stolen or lost from you, you'd have to pay. Therefore, it's like it's yours. So it sounds like you need that level of responsibility in order to be chayiv for having the chametz on Pesach. There's another proof in Pesachim Daf Lamed Aleph, which is the second Mar Makom. It says over there, let's say there's a machlokes tanoim. Yisrael shehil v'lenachri al chemtzo la'achar Pesach ino over. If a person lent a guy and took the chametz of the guy as a collateral, so after Pesach there's no isser, right? So he has the chametz of a guy in his house, but he's not over the isser. Mishum Rabbi Meir omru over. And Rabbi Meir says, no, he is over this, sir. My lab hakol mifli, isn't this the machlokes? The Mar Savar, one opinion holds, l'mafreya hu gova, that he collects retroactively. Umar Savar, and the other shita holds, mikanu labahu gova, he collects from only the point of collection. Right, so here we're going to be talking about a case, we think, where he ended up collecting this chametz. Rabbi Meir says that collection goes retroactively, so it's like it was yours the whole time, so then you can't have it on Pesach. The Chacham will say, no, it doesn't go retroactively, it only goes from the time of collection, and therefore, on Pesach was really just the guy's chametz in your property, and therefore your patur. That's what we thought. Then the Gemara goes and disproves this, and eventually continues If you look in the second line of the second column, the Kamifli Rav Yitzchak, some machlokes in the sheet of Rav Yitzchak. Rav Yitzchak says, "Minayin lebal chov shekona mashkon." How do we know that the lender acquires the mashkon? It's like it's his. Shneimar, as the pasuk says, "L'cha tia hatzedakah," that if you return the mashkon to the poor person in the evening, if it's his clothing that he wears to sleep, so then it's considered a tzedakah for you. Iminu kona mashkon, but if you weren't kona it, tzedakah minayin. So how can it be considered tzedakah? Tzedakah always means you give the poor person something that's yours. Mikan lebal chov shekona mashkon. We see from here that the Baal Chov, he acquires the mashkon. Tanakama savar hani mili Yisrael Yisrael. Tanakama says that only works if there's two Jews. Hu dekrina bei ulchatiyat tzedakah, because that's what the pasuk of ulchatiyat tzedakah is talking about. Only two Jews. Av Yisrael minachi lo kani. A Yisrael is not going to be kona the mashkon of a guy, and therefore he's not going to be responsible. He's not chayiv to get rid of that chametz on Pesach. Rabbi Meir savar kavachomer. Rabbi Meir holds as a kavachomer. Yisrael kani. Yisrael minachi lo kol shekei. That if a Yisrael is kona from another Yisrael, certainly he would be kona from a guy. So the Shagat points out that we know if, let's say a Yid would take a mashkon. Let's say you take a mashkon from another person. You're taking a mashkon. Forget about chametz. Forget about Rav Yitzchak. If I take a mashkon from another person, what is my responsibility for watching this mashkon? Right, I lent him money. I took a collateral. What's my responsibility? It's a machlokas. Some say he has the din of a shomer chinam, that he's chayiv in just for pshia, just for negligent. Some say he has the higher level of a shomer sachar, that he's chayiv even for gneva aviv. But there is a chiyuv, right, that starts out without any kinyan, right? Even if you don't own it, without Rav Yitzchak, without owning the mashkon, I already have some sort of chiyuv to watch it by the fact that I took it into my possession. It's his item and I'm watching it for him. So therefore, in this situation, why do we need to get into the discussion of whether he's kona the mashkon? If he has responsibility for the mashkon, for the guy's chametz, he has responsibility for it, so then he should be chayiv to destroy it on Pesach. He should be chayiv to get rid of that type of chametz. He should not be able to have that in his house. Now, the truth is, what we have to discuss, and this is going to be a major component in this entire shir, is what is my responsibility when I watch a guy's item? Right? We've been now kind of mixing in the idea of shomer chinam, shomer sachar. Those are all concepts that applies to Yidden. Right? If I'm watching another Jew's item, if I'm a shomer chinam, I have one set of halachas. A shomer sachar, I have another set of halachas. If I'm a shol, I have another set of halachos. Does that apply by a guy or not? So, says the Shagat Aryeh, we could learn it from the Gemara Bava Metzia Daf Nun Vav Amud Aleph. And the Gemara there says, it starts as a Mishnah, Elu Dvarim Shein Lehem Ona. There are items that don't have Ona. Ona is a specific din regarding the price was not charged correctly, either overpriced or underpriced. Ha'avadim, v'hashtaros, v'hakarkos, v'hakdeshos. Right, so 4 items that the Mishnah talks about over here: slaves, documents, land, and items that belong to Hakdish. So they don't have the same din of Ona. Ein lahem tashlumei kefel, v'lo tashlumei arba v'chamisha. If a person stole these things, he wouldn't have to pay kefel, he wouldn't have to pay twice when he's caught, or 4 or 5 times if it was a case of a sheep or a cow. Shomer, and this is the part where we really need, is shomer chinam eino nishpa, but it'll say sachar eino mishalim, that a shomer chinam would not have to swear, and that he took it from, that he didn't take it from himself, and a person that was paid to watch it wouldn't have to pay for a gneva and aveda. And the Gemara explains, minani mili. So shomer chinam nishpa, right? The shomer chinam doesn't swear. Minani mili. How do we know this? The Tana Rabbanan. The Brisa says, ki eating ishal reyehu. If a person gives his friend something, klal, we consider that a general rule. Kesef o kelim, prat. Kesef and kelim, those are details. And then the pasuk continues, v'gunam and b'yis ish, really not v'gunam b'yis ish, because we're not talking about geneva, so the gears is supposed to be changed to lishmar, chazer klal. The word lishmar is another generalization. Klal, prat, klal, so we have a klal, prat, klal. And yato nelakin a prat. So we learned it like a prat. Ma prat mefurish davar metal to gufo mamon. Just like the detail is something which is movable, and it itself has monetary value. Af kol davar hametal to gufo mamon. So also everything that has these two factors, that it is movable and it has intrinsic monetary value, have the dinim of shomer chinam. Yatsu karkos, so we're going to exclude land, sheina metalton, it's not movable. Yatsu avadim, we're going to exclude slaves, shukshul karkos, because they're compared to land. Yatsu shtaros, we're going to exclude documents, shapapisha metalton, even though they could be moved, in gufon mamon, but they don't have intrinsic value. Hekdeshos, and anything that belongs to hekdesh is going to be excluded. Amar Kro, because the pasuk says Re'ehu, that he borrowed it, he was watching it for his friend. Re'ehu v'lo shel hekdesh. Re'ehu excludes hekdesh. And nosur sachar inu mishalim. The somer sachar doesn't have to pay. It's going to be basically the same drashas. Just read it quickly. Tanar Banan, Kitin Yishal Re'ehu klal, Chamor Oshar Oseh prat, V'chol behema lishmar Chaz of a klal, klal prat klal, Yishal Nelakin prat, Ma prat mefurish davar metal to gufo mamon, Av kol davar metal to gufo mamon, Yatsu karkos sheina metaltlin, Yatsu avadim shukshul karkos, Yatsu shtaros halfisha metaltlin in gufo mamon, Hekdeshos, and how do we exclude hekdesh? Same drasha, Amar Kar Re'ehu, also by shomer sachar, use the word Re'ehu, Re'ehu v'lo shel hekdesh. So we see that the dinim of shomer don't apply in all situations. There's some situations they don't apply. Now, what would be the case of a guy? We didn't mention anything about a guy in these Mishnayos. But, says the Shagas Arye, since it uses the word Re'ehu, your friend, and we say that excludes if it belongs to hekdesh, so it makes sense that it would also exclude that of a guy. Anytime we have the word Re'ehu to exclude something that belongs to hekdesh, we also exclude that which belongs to a guy. And not only that, the Rambam says that explicitly. That's Os Daled, and the Rambam Hilchos Skiros. Parak Beis Halacha Aleph, Shlosha Dinin Hamur B'Torah Ba'arba HaShomrim, the three levels of responsibility that are spoken about with the four types of watchmen. In an element metalchlin shall Yisrael, only if it's movable property of a Yisrael, V'shel Hedyot, and not Hekdesh. Shneimar Kesefo Kelim, V'chol Behema, Yatsu Karkos. V'yatsu avadim shokshel karkos, v'yatsu ashtaros shein gufo mamon, v'yatsu hekdeshos shnemer kidish l'reihu, v'yatsu nichsei akum, and it excludes the property of a guy. Right, so the Rambam, even though it doesn't say it explicitly in the Gemara, but the Rambam understands, and the Shagas Arye agrees with this, that if it says reihu, we have to also exclude the property of a guy, which means that all the rules of shomer don't apply to a guy. However, the Rambam holds, and the truth is, you could see it a little bit already from the Gemara. If you notice, we keep mentioning, both in the Gemara and in the Rambam, we kept mentioning, and the truth is, we should have really continued also in that Rambam. It says here, right, Mikan Amru, from continuing where we left off in that Rambam, Us Daled at the end of the second line, Mikan Amru Chacham Ha'avadim V'hashtaros V'hakarkos V'hakdeshus Shomer Chinam Shalhen Inu Nishba, that the Shomer Chinam does not swear. Nosi Sachar or Socher Inu Mishalim. The Nosi Sachar and Socher don't have to pay. But if you made a special kinyan, and you made a kinyan and you or mechayiv yourself to that level of responsibility, then you're chayiv. It's just the rule of what happens to the Shomer Chinam, the Shomer Sachar. And these situations are different than regular Shomer. Now, both in the Mishnah and in the Gemara and in the Rambam, it's interesting that it says Shomer Chinam Ino Nishba. He doesn't swear, right? Because one of the din of the Shomer Chinam is that if it got lost and he's pater, he has to swear that he didn't take it for himself. So he has to swear that he doesn't have to do it by these cases. It doesn't say, right? You would think what it should say is a Shomer Chinam doesn't have to pay if it's a pshia. Right? A Shomer Chinam sometimes is chayiv. He's chayiv in case of a pshia. A Shomer Sachar also has to swear. Right? If he wants to say he's pater because of an ones, he also is going to have to swear. But that's not what the Mishnah focuses on. We focus on the main halacha. The main halacha is that he's chayiv by Gnev and Aveda. So that's what we say. Shomer Sachar ino mishali. But by the Shomer Chinam, we don't talk about the case where he has to pay. Why is that? So according to the Rambam, the reason is because you always are chayiv for pshia. You're always chayiv for pshia. In all of these cases, land and hektish and slaves and property of a guy, you will be chayiv in pshia. If you were negligent, you're chayiv. And that the Rambam says explicitly in Halacha Gimel, which is Os Hey in the Mar Makomos. Yearly, it appears to me, Shem Pasha Hashomer Ba'avadim Kiyutz Behen Chayiv L'Shalim, that if he's negligent with slaves or any of the other things we mentioned, he would have to pay. She'ino Pater Ba'avadim V'Karkos U'Shtaros Elamidin Geneva V'Aveda. He's only Pater from Avadim Karkos and Shtaros from Geneva V'Aveda U'Miso Kiyutz Behen, only from higher levels of responsibility. Shem Hayashomer Chinam Al Metaltlin V'Nignavu O Avdu Yishava. For example, if he's a shomer chinam on movable property and it was stolen, he'd have a chiv to make a shvua. Therefore, if it's one of these items, he doesn't have to swear. So also, if he's a shomer sachar, a higher level of watching, and he would have to pay for gneva aveda by regular movable property, by these things he doesn't have to pay. But if he was negligent, who would have to pay? Because if you're negligent, it's like you damaged it. That's not considered like a chiyuv that comes from your responsibility of watching it. That's a chiyuv because it's like you damaged your friend's property. And therefore, there's no difference if you damage someone's land or you damage someone's movable property. You always have to pay for anything that you damage. And of course, it's logical then also if it belongs to a guy or hektish or any of these things. If you damage something of hektish, you have to pay. If you damage something of a guy, you have to pay. It's not stemming from your responsibility as a watchman. So therefore, getting back to what we were discussing, if I remember what it was, is, we spoke about the case where you took the mashkon from the guy. The guy had chametz, I lent the money, and I'm taking it as a mashkon. So when I take it as a mashkon, now I have responsibility for it. What responsibility do I have? Well, based on what we just saw, according to the Rambam, I have the responsibility of pshia, because since he's a guy, I don't have the regular rules. So it doesn't matter what the regular rules are by a mashkon. It's a machlokes, but it doesn't matter. Because if I'm taking it from a guy, my responsibility, if I don't have a kinyan on it, my responsibility would only be that I'm chayiv for a pshia. The Rambam said, being chayiv for a pshia is not good enough to make you have to get rid of the chametz. You only have to get rid of the chametz if you're responsible for gneva aveda. Now that we understand that whole Gemara that we spoke about in Pesach and Lamed Aleph makes sense. The fact that I took it for a mashkon would not make me be over this or Rabbi Matzeh with the guy's chametz, because I'm only chayiv for the pshia. Only if I have a higher level of responsibility, which I didn't take upon myself. So therefore, according to Rabbi Meir, that I have some sort of kinyan, so it's problematic. According to the Chum, I don't have a kinyan, it's not problematic. But as far as the shmir is concerned, there was no issue. So that Gemara now becomes a proof to the sheet of the Rambam. Another interesting thing, is not in the Shagged but something I thought, is it also now, we understand the Rambam Shita also much better. The Rambam says, if I'm responsible for negligence, that doesn't make it like it's mine. But if I'm responsible for Gneva Aveda, it makes it like it's mine. How did the Rambam explain the chiyuv for negligence? He said, being chayiv for negligence is just like taking responsibility for your damages. Damages doesn't have to be mine for me to be responsible for damages. So therefore, the fact that I'm responsible for a pshia doesn't make it as if it's mine. That shouldn't make it as if it's mine. I shouldn't have to get rid of that chametz. It's only if I have a higher level of responsibility that I actually have. The only reason why I should care whether something gets lost or stolen if it's mine. So therefore, even though it's not really mine, I'm just watching it, but I have that level of responsibility. So therefore, I have to get rid of that type of chametz. So the Rambam Shita works out very well with the way he understands the chiyuv of a pshia. That type of chiyuv would not make it like it's your chametz. However, the Rosh disagrees with the Rambam on 2 points. Number one, the Rosh holds that if I have something that belongs to a guy, I'm watching something that belongs to a guy, then I'm not chayiv even for pshia. There's no chiyuvim. He disagrees with that last Rambam that we saw, and this is a rush in Masechah Shvuos, Perek Vav Halacha Chaf Daled, which is the 6th Maramakom. Hadatnan Shomer Chinam Ein Nishba. That which we say if Shomer Chinam does not swear, Mishum Dekra Ki Yitain Dechsib B'Shomer Chinam Arya B'Shvua. The reason why we mentioned swearing, right? We pointed out it's a little interesting. Why are we mentioning about the swearing? We're not mentioning about the chiyuv of pshia. The reason why we mention it is because the pasuk that we make this whole drasha from is talking about swearing. And also he wouldn't have to pay his chiyuv, the hainu pshia, which is if he was negligent. Just like a shomer sachar doesn't have to pay his chiyuv, the hainu gneim v'aveda. So also shomer chinam, in these cases, right, the land and the shtar and the eved and the hektish and the guy, all of those, according to the Rosh, you're completely potter. You don't even have to pay for. Pshia. In which case, he could explain the Gemara and Psachim, not like the Rambam. He could say, if I take a mashkel from a guy, and I want to view it only from the standpoint of my chiyuv to guard it, because I've taken it from him, since I took it from a guy, I have no chiyuv. And therefore, certainly there's no chiyuv for me to get rid of that chametz on Pesach. It's only because, when we say, according to the teacher of Yitzchak, if you have the Kavachomer, so then it's as if I own the mashkon, then I have to get rid of the chametz. So I can understand that whole Gemara, even if we would say that a chiyuv of pshia would be enough to make you have to get rid of the chametz, we would still understand the Gemara Pesach. Right, so the raya that we brought, the proof that we brought to the Rambam, works very well within the sheet of the Rambam. But if you understand a little bit differently in regards to the chiyuvim towards the object of a guy, so then we don't have a proof anymore from that Gemara. You can read that Gemara in a different way. And the truth is that the Rosh, in fact, disagrees with the Rambam also by the chametz of a guy. And he holds that a chametz of a guy, even if you're only responsible for negligence, that's enough to make you chayiv by your own bayim. And you cannot have that chametz on Pesach. So it ends up two machloksim, which through the sugyas are connected. The Rambam holds, if I am watching the chametz of a guy, I'm chayiv in pshia. That would not make me chayiv to get rid of that chametz. But if I would take upon myself a higher level of responsibility for gneim and avida, then I would have to get rid of the chametz. The Rosh says, if I take a guy's chametz without any conditions, I'm not chayiv for anything. And I certainly don't have to get rid of it on Pesach, but I would accept upon myself just a little bit of responsibility. For negligence, that already would make it problematic for me to have that chametz on Pesach. Right? So they both work that if I just take it without saying anything, it's okay. Right? But if I take a higher level of responsibility, according to the Rambam, I need a much higher level, according to the Rosh, a little bit higher level, then I would have to get rid of the chametz on Pesach. Now, we had the Gemara that seemed to be like the Rambam, that Rava told the people in the city, right? Only if it's a Gnev Avida. But there's also mashmos in the Gemara in Psachim Daf Vav, which is a little bit like the Rush. The Gemara there says, Tana Rabbanan, Nachi shenichas l'chatzer shel Yisrael u'b'tzeiku biyado ein zakuk levar. If a guy brought chametz into the chatzar of a Yisrael, you don't have to get rid of it, right? It's the guy's chametz. Hifkidu etzlo, but if he deposited it by him, zakuk levar, then he would have to get rid of it. Yichilu bayis, but if you designated him a spot for it, then ein zakuk levar, you don't have to get rid of it. Shnemar lo yimatzei. Okay. So this brisa seems to say that if I take the chametz of a guy to watch it, that's hifkido etzlo, as soon as I take it to watch, so then I'm already have to get rid of that chametz. Now, if I take it without making any specific conditions, I should, according to the Rambam, I should only be chayiv for pshia, and I should still not have to get rid of the chametz. Sounds though from the Gemara I do have to get rid of the chametz. This ends up being a question on the Rambam. It's not such it doesn't become a proof to the Rosh, right? Because the Rosh really has to deal with the same issue. that if Kidu Etzlo sounds like there was no conditions, according to the Rashi, you're not chayiv anything. In which case, you wouldn't have to get rid of it either. So according to the Rashi, we're going to have to say it's talking about a case where you stipulated something with the guy. You have to say that. Once I'm stipulating something with the guy, so maybe I stipulated with him that I'm chayiv for only pshia. Maybe I stipulated it with him I'm chayiv for gnei aveda. It doesn't say in the Gemara what I stipulated with him, but according to the Rosh, it has to be where I stipulated something with him. According to the Rambam, right, we wouldn't have to explain the Gemara that way, in which case it would be problematic according to the Rambam. So this even though we had one Gemara which seems very clear like the Rambam, we now have this Gemara which doesn't seem so clear like or it seems to be not like the Rambam. So it's not 100% clear from the sugyas which way we would go with this. Now the opinion of Rashi, the Ran says that the Rashi holds like the Rush, that even if he's only chayiv for pshia, then he's going to be also chayiv for bayura bayimotz, and he would not be able to have the chametz of a goy on Pesach. How does the Ran know that's the shita of Rashi? It seems to be, says the Shagas Aryeh, from the Rashis on this sugya that we just saw in Bava Manalev. So we have the Rashis there in Ozayin in the Mar Makomos. Hifkidu Etzlo, if it was deposited by him, Ve'kibel alei achrayis, and he took responsibility, Kinu Mefarish v'Azal, as we explained, Zachuk Lavara. So then he has to get rid of it. Yichil bias, but if he designates himself a house, Kolomar, and what does that designating do? We spoke about this Rashi in the previous shiurim. It's like he's saying, Lo kiblu alav. He's not accepting responsibility. Elo amrlei, he tells him, Harei habayis l'fanecha. My house is available for you. Hanach ba'achas ben azavios. Stick it in one of the corners, but I'm not responsible. Ain't zakul chavaris. Then he doesn't have to destroy it. Now, so what does Rashi seem to say? Is if I have to designate him a spot and take no responsibility, but if I have any responsibility, even from negligence, it would seem from Rashi that would be problematic. That would be like the shita of the Rush. However, the Shagas Aryeh disagrees with the Ran, and he says, we know the Rambam also explains like Rashi, that yichud lo bayis means that you set him a spot, and that shows that you're not taking any responsibility. Nevertheless, we know that the Rambam holds, even if he would take responsibility for negligence, he wouldn't be chayiv to destroy it. So it wouldn't be over this or Bayir Motzei. So we're not sure why, right? I can't explain, says the Shagas Aryeh, I can't explain to you why the Rambam explains the Gemara that way. Why do I have to designate him a spot? All I have to do is just not take extra responsibility upon myself. I don't have to designate him a spot and take no responsibility. But however the Rambam could answer it, you could explain Rashi the same way. So we don't know how the Rambam explains. He didn't give us an explanation in the Rambam, why the Rambam explains this way. But you can't bring a proof from the fact that Rashi says something that the Rambam also said, that therefore he doesn't hold like the Rambam. That you for sure can't do. So therefore he disagrees with this Ran that says that Rashi has to hold like the Rush, because the whole Raya is from a statement that Rashi makes, that the Rambam also makes that statement. So you could just easily hold like the Rambam. We can't explain the Rambam, why the Rambam holds that way. I mean, I don't know if no one can, but it was not explained in the Shagas Aryeh. But bottom line is that you don't have a proof that Rashi disagrees with the Rambam. So what would be Lamaisa? So the Shagas Aryeh, he wants to say the halacha should be like the Rambam. I guess because the first Gemara that we saw is pretty clear, right? The Rava said that the only chiyuv is because they have responsibility for the Gnei Aveda. So therefore, if you only have responsibility for Pshia, the Shagas Aryeh wants to say you don't have to get rid of the chametz. That would be the halacha. However, lemaisa, he wouldn't want you to rely on that l'chachila. L'chachila, you shouldn't have any responsibility for a guy's chametz on Pesach. But b'diavad, if you had responsibility for the guy's chametz only for pshia, only for negligent, but if it got stolen, you wouldn't be responsible. And now it's already over Alav HaPesach, which we hold is only kanas, right? Pesach was over on Pesach. Chametz that was over on Pesach. So therefore, in that case, it's only kanas. And we really think the halacha anyway should be like the Rambam, that it was okay. So therefore, you don't have to get rid of that chametz. You'd be able to have hanaf from that chametz after Pesach. Okay, stop here.